Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, member units. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you very much for your kind invitation. I don't often get to stand in for the Syrian ambassador, so we can make policy right now, though, if that'll be helpful. It's a real pleasure to be here with you tonight to talk about Afghanistan, which is a subject near and dear to my heart, having been in and out of the area for about 35 years, and Dave gave you the introduction a little bit about my background. What I'd like to do tonight is to make a presentation that might be a bit different from what you might hear elsewhere, policy and military and security and things like that. Because from basically off and on from April 2002 when I went back to December 2007 when I returned to Denver, I lived and worked in Kabul on the economy without any kind of relationship with the government. I had my own cars, guards, drivers, security, house, everything on my own. So most, in fact, if not all Americans, except for some NGO employees, are really pretty much in lockdown in Kabul now. Embassy employees, any USAID people are all living and working in high security compounds, which are as equally difficult to get out of as they are to get into. So I had the unique opportunity to really be able to live and work among the Afghan people. And having an experience there going back to 1971, I'm fluent enough in two of the dialects to be able to communicate handily. So what I'd like to do is to show you some pictures and kind of give you a rambling dialogue about my experience there personally and socially, as well as in business, and to hopefully give you a little bit more of a personal perspective of Afghanistan and the Afghan people than you would more likely get from the paper. One of the kind of interesting things about cross-cultural work is humor. And humor is difficult often to translate between culture. Jokes don't often go well between languages. In the Middle East, there is a notorious character named Mullah Nasruddin. And this is the mullah who is always pictured with his donkey. And there are numerous comparisons made between him and his donkey as to their similarities in both intellect and action. He is reviled as a buffoon and revered as a very sage philosopher who quotes the great Sufi poets Rumi, Sadi, Hafez. He is the butt of every joke, and he is the font of endless wisdom, to the extent that no one will claim him. Afghans say he's a Turk, Turks say he's an Indian, Indians say he's Pakistani, but in any event, he has a way of presenting, and there are hundreds or maybe thousands, I don't know, of Mullah Nasruddin jokes circulating around the Middle East. And one of my favorites, which kind of lends a perspective, which I think is interesting, is that the mullah was riding on his donkey through a village one afternoon and saw his middle-aged friend Ahmed up on a roof with a crowd gathered around the house. And the mullah rode up and said, "Well, Ahmed, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I came up here on my roof to repair it, and now I'm finished, but it was easy to climb up. It's more difficult to climb down, and I'm afraid." And the mullah said, "Well, that's easy." He said, "You, boy, go get a rope." And he did, and he threw the rope up to Ahmed and said, "Tie one end around your waist." And Ahmed did, and he threw the rope down, and the mullah walked over and grabbed the rope and pulled him down, and Ahmed came flying down and crashed on the ground and said, "What did you do that for?" And he said, "Well, I brought a lot of people up from wells that way." So there's an interesting perspective about Afghanistan that sometimes it's necessary to kind of turn your logic upside down and think out of the box and address apparent contradictions and things that are unfamiliar in a way which doesn't often suit your orthodoxy. So as a business person in Afghanistan, I found that my goals when I went back to open my water company were to create an education and training and employment platform as a basis to establish a sanitary food distribution system for the northeastern part of the country, while at the same empowering my employees and my customers and everybody that we touched in this business with some ability to participate in their own social and economic and political future. Lofty goals, somewhat met. And so I will show you a brief story. Another thing about this is that I thought, well, I've got about 45 minutes to talk, and I'll pick a few pictures, and I have a pretty extensive photo library, and I kept, this is good, yeah, I want to see this, I did that, but 300 pictures later, I realized I had to kind of trim it down a bit. So what I have here is a slideshow that's going to run in about a 10-second sequence per picture, and I'll continue to talk during part of that, and then I'll stop talking and just let the rest of it kind of roll as a backdrop, and hopefully we can have some discussion. So, Afghanistan is a place where if you ask Afghans to think of one word as to who they are, they will say, I'm a Muslim. Think about what you would say. This is a country with an extensive history. These are the Buddhas at Bamiyan that were blown up by Mullah Omar. It's a country with millennia of traditions of hospitality. You're being approached by people with a wash basin to wash your hands. It's a country full of war criminals, pedophiles, drug dealers, gun runners, who are now high officials of government, provincial governors, parliamentary officials. It's a place where people like Ahmed Shah Massoud, the Lion of the Panjshir, who was martyred by Al-Qaeda on September 10th, 2001, are immortalized and become a cult hero. It is a country full of drugs, poppy. They supply about 80% of the world's opium production. It is a country where small incidents can rapidly escalate into violence and mob action. It is a country of really unsurpassed beauty and contrast, of color, of texture. It's a place where everybody works, especially the children, it seems. This little girl walks several miles a day with a bucket of water. Her brother cooks by a fire with the pot cemented into the back. It's a place of incredible wrenching poverty. These are children fighting over empty cement bags to take home, to burn. It's a place of unimaginable wealth. The elites build their palaces. It's a place where nothing gets thrown away. And rooftops are more storage space for all manner of your junk, their useful stuff. It's a place of incredible ethnic diversity. This is a really interesting guy with 11 bullet holes in him from the jihad against the Soviets and the struggle against the Taliban. Little blonde-haired, green-eyed girl on the street. Everybody in between. Beautiful, natural beauty. The lakes of Bandi Amir. It's a place where spring is heralded by the blooming of the apricot trees in high mountain valleys. I was consistently met with laughter, with smiles, with hospitality, with welcoming looks and warm enthusiasm everywhere that I went. As an American, as a foreigner, it is a place where simple expressions of beauty jump out at you suddenly and unexpectedly. There's a big door to walk through. Let's go ahead through it, and I'll just stop on the next slide briefly. Afghanistan, bet you all know where it is in the heart of Asia, surrounded by all the stands of Soviet Central Asia. And a 17th century poet named Muhammad Iqbal, who I believe was Indian, wrote a poem which rhymes in Persian but doesn't in English. But anyway, the message is, Asia is a living body and Afghanistan is its heart. In the ruin of the heart lies the ruin of the body. So long as the heart is free, the body remains free. If not, it becomes a straw adrift in the wind. There is something special about the geopolitical placement of Afghanistan and its situation vis-a-vis its surrounding neighbors, where it is at a crossroads and has been at a crossroads for millennia. The Silk Road, the Greeks, the Persians, the Indians, the British, the Germans, everybody has gone back and forth through Afghanistan through history. At the same time, and I think even more relevant to what's happening today, Afghanistan was what the Russians needed to cross to get to a warm water port on the Indian Ocean. Afghanistan is strategically placed in terms of India's ability to distract Pakistan on its rear front. Afghanistan is the place where Germany went during World War II, having aligned with Iran to try to push through to take British India. It has been rolled over the Mongols. Everybody came to Afghanistan. And today, it continues to be at the heart of a geopolitical struggle between all of its neighbors, where India uses Afghanistan as a shield against Pakistan, Iran uses it as a shield against the Arabs, the Chinese, the Turks, the Russians, everybody has an agenda for Afghanistan. So at dinner tonight, we were talking about, well, gee, why are we there and why should we do this and how come we're spending all this money? My personal perspective is that if we do not, it remains such an important piece of real estate for all of the regional players who want to maintain it as the enemy of their enemy, that we can only look back to 1989, the last time we pulled out after the Soviet Union pulled out, look at the vacuum which occurred as a result of our departure, view the Civil War that came as a result of the turf battle created by that vacuum, and how that created the opportunity for Pakistan to work to develop the Taliban to take over the country, basically as a means to minimize Indian influence in that part of the country and to assure free trade for Pakistan traders importing goods into Central Asia. So again, they became a tool. When they become a tool and are manipulated, it's always in an opportunistic way, and this is something that I think we need to take seriously. Afghanistan, as I'm sure you're all aware, is a tribal society. It's a rural and agrarian society. This map shows the various tribal groups of the country. And it is interesting on a number of counts, one of which is this is the Pakistan border running through this Pashtun area, what a lot of Pashtun people call Pashtunistan. There are also pockets of Pashtun people scattered around the border areas of the country. And this gives you some indication of why when the Taliban grew out of Kandahar and expanded to the north and eventually came back around to take Kabul, they had forces that they were able to leave in place in these critical areas to maintain security while they proceeded to Kabul. These Pashtun tribal dots here are Achakzai Pashtun from this area on the Afghan-Pakistan border, who were placed there during a previous king's regime to maintain border security. So it is an ethnic patchwork. Each of these colors represents, in a kind of general way, a tribe, but it also represents a socio-linguistic, ethnic, cultural unit. They speak different languages. In the case of the Hazara, who are these Mongoloid-featured people, they are Shiite Muslims as opposed to Sunni Muslims, which is the sect of the rest of the country. Uzbeks have an affiliation with Uzbekistan, Tajiks have an affiliation with Tajikistan, Turkmens have an affiliation with Turkmenistan. You get the idea. Everybody's pulling them in a different direction. Flying in, you get some idea for the ruggedness of the topography of the country. It is a rural society. Of the 32 million Afghans, about 28 million of them live in the countryside. It's an agrarian. How you travel depends on the company you keep. This is me with an Afghan National Police officer. I also had other traveling companions. This is Butch. He's Uzbek Sharpei, my good pal. How you're received where you go depends a lot on who your group is and who's receiving you and looking after you. It helps to have house staff, cars, guards, drivers, people who kind of know how to help you be in the right place at the right time. Everywhere you go, you'll be fed as a guest. So first you have to set the table. The spread is fabulous. Afghan food is wonderful. The produce is out of this world for things in season. You'll be entertained. Music is a huge part of Afghan culture, and simple pleasures take on a huge role. Maybe you'll be invited to meet the local council, talk about local issues, or engage in contests in the local park, lifting heavy rocks. I decline. So fun's where you find it in Afghanistan. And that's what these guys do on a Friday afternoon, is lift heavy rocks. Traveling where you find a paved road is a wonderful thing, but you can see it's a very rugged topography. The ruins of war are everywhere. Halo Trust is a mine-sweeping operation. They demine. They also put up posters pointing out what not to touch, what's dangerous. When they demine an area, they align it with white rocks. If you see an area with red rocks, you don't want to go there because it's still an active minefield. This is the national highway from the northern border to Kabul. You go through some beautiful countryside, fabulous views. There's a lot of water in all of the river, in all the valleys. You meet people with guns everywhere. As you travel through the country, every militia has its guards. Some people have more serious guns than others, but everybody's armed, and everybody exerts security on their own territory. Traveling through the high mountains can be daunting. The probably most terrifying experience I had in Afghanistan was in the Salang Tunnel, which you can see the ice build up is just, it goes for miles at about 13,000 feet. Highways that are in areas which have not experienced the war are still in pretty good shape. Highways where there were active conflict, tank convoys, heavy armor that tore up the road, there's nothing left of them. On the road, you encounter these guys. These are the freight liners of Afghanistan, and they are always grossly overloaded to about 3 times chassis capacity. Dirt roads are a good thing because they slow down. On paved roads, you can see the loads get pretty extreme. But again, when people drive too fast, accidents happen. And there's an element about introduction of modern technology to people whose habits don't change that we'll talk a little bit more about later on. Again, life in the country is simple. People work hard. This little boy is taking his load of bushes to town to sell for $2. It takes him a day each way. It makes about $1 a day. People have different lifestyles. These are nomads near Jalalabad. Most of the urban or rural gentry lives in fortified compounds like this in agricultural areas. This is Osama bin Laden's old neighborhood near Jalalabad, and you can see these compounds are all enclosed with high walls. That's Roby's and my son James at Osama bin Laden's house in Jalalabad after it had been redecorated by U.S. forces. Prosperous farmers live in houses kind of like this. They have windows. They probably do not have running water. They have electricity in a lot of areas. When you fly in, you can see the patchwork and the effect of all of these walled compounds, how difficult it is to mount a security operation in an environment like that. Really tough. There's always a welcoming committee of some kind. I don't show pictures of troops, by the way, so you won't see any of those. This is the departure lounge at Kabul International Airport. This is the baggage claim area. The conveyor wasn't working, so they pushed bags out one by one through a cubby. It's hard to depict traffic in a photo, but traffic is unbelievable, and there are a number of kinds of traffic on the road in Kabul. You can also see a lot of different housing styles. These are the poorest of the poor who are living in barely tents, but you can also see there's still a lot of destruction from the Civil War, especially in the western parts of Kabul. But these are Soviet-built apartment houses in East Kabul near our water plant. This is some of the highest priced real estate in Kabul because they have central heat and central water and sewer systems. A lot of people live without electricity or running water. There are cemeteries everywhere. Millions of people died in the jihad against the Soviets in the Civil War. It's an ISAF convoy. You want to avoid those because they're a target. That's why I'm holding back. Throughout town, this is a fairly common kind of structure. Retail shops down below, apartments up above. Bustling markets, very crowded, everything for sale. You could go to the bank. That is a money changer. Shops are well stocked with kind of an odd assortment of things. It's what is available. It's what people can get from their trading partners. When it rains in Kabul, it's not much fun. Everything kind of turns to peanut butter. This is the street outside my house. And my house is right behind the structure here. That's our front gate, and all houses have fortified gates like this for security access. This is a house that we found right after we painted it. I'm sorry I don't have a before shot, but this is after we started working on it. And that is the back of that building that I said we lived behind. So this is what it looked like when we took it over. And with a little help and encouragement from our gardener, this is what he turned it into. And that is Sardar, the gardener, who has 3 bullet holes in him, and 1 bullet still lodged up against his spine. And this is the fruits of his green thumb and some bluegrass grass seed from here in Denver. Living room. So we were living the high life here. This is great. It's a wonderful house. This is the way most foreign compounds are decorated, high security, so you can't climb in, throw a grenade in. Technology in Afghanistan is primitive. These are stone mills making flour. It's run from a water drop. This guy is boiling down sugar juice to make gur, which is a heavy brown sugar product. Construction technology is very basic and primitive. It's mud or mud brick, and they do string a line, which is nice, but basically this is just hard-packed mud. He is hand forging these axe heads in a wood fire. Go get your knives sharpened. Guns everywhere. Whatever you want, it's there. You can buy them by the thousands. This is our plant. This is Afghanistan Natural Beverages, where we were bottling water. We had a clean room production line. We produced our own bottles. The bottles are sorted in this equipment and then fed into the production line. I had 5 war women employees, war widows, who we had to negotiate with their deceased husbands' brothers to get them to be permitted to work in the plant. They ran the sanitary production line and were fabulous employees. We produced 3 different sizes of bottled water product and packaged them for sale to the local bazaar, but then also into the international community. We sold to U.S. Special Operations Forward Bases, ISAF, PRTs, the Afghan Parliament, all the national airlines, all high security accounts. This is Kais Sahel, my office manager, with a pallet getting ready to ship out. Here we are being served on Ariana, the Afghan national airline. My partner, Baryalai, is now running for president against President Karzai. He has a shake at it. This is my IF Hope nursery office manager in Kabul. And I'd like to focus on him just for a second because he, give me just a sec here. Okay. His name is Mahajer, and Mahajer means refugee. Oops. Hope that does it. See, Mahajer doesn't want to hang around. So the name Mahajer means refugee. And in Judeo-Christian cultures, it is common to give your children Old Testament names. So Abraham, and in Farsi it would be Ibrahim. Also, you may be surprised to know there are Afghans named Esau, Jesus, Maryam, Mary, Noah, Yusuf, Joseph. And these names are in Islamic culture and Afghan culture taken to the next level, where you will find people name things like Bismillah, which means in the name of God, or Din Muhammad, the faith of Muhammad, or Sheikh al-Islam, protector of the faith. Now, imagine naming your child protector of the faith. And now take the third leap and think about naming your child refugee, or mujahid, freedom fighter. The spirit and the soul and the pathos of the people they marinate in this stuff. They are consumed and obsessed by their history, their pathos, their struggle. And these are people who, for 35 years of war, have been ripping out bushes, trees, shrubs, vine, grass by the roots to eat it, or to make heat to cook their food, or to heat their homes. So when you look at these people, I think it's important to understand the power of the feeling and the desperation with which they address a life with no hope. And one of the things that we were talking about at dinner tonight was, well, Jim, do you have hope for Afghanistan? I have hope because of people like this. And I have hope because also of what I think is an important commitment that we need to make as Americans to work with people like this to help them into a globalized 21st century reality. Oh, by the way, he was Mullah Omar's IT manager. Mullah Omar is the #2 Taliban commander in Afghanistan. So Mahajer's a certified Microsoft technician, and Mullah Omar grabbed him and made, when they took Kabul, another friend of mine, Kari, was Mullah Omar's security chief in Kabul. So these, my office manager is ex-Taliban IT manager. And he was feeding his family. He had a job. He is not somebody who bought into the Quetta Shura doctrine about being a jihadist or anything like that. These are pragmatic people. I credit him with saving my life at least once. So he's our Kabul office manager. Anissa is the cook at my bottled water plant. She's a war widow. Her son Fahim was the head of our janitorial and cleaning staff. These are Pashtuns. Qais Sahel grew up in a refugee camp in Quetta, Pakistan, speaks 7 languages fluently. These other ladies are my sanitary bottling line staff. And they worked hard. They came to work on time. They bossed all the guys around. They got it done. And we never had a recall. We never had a reject. We never had a problem with our sanitation. This gentleman's our sales manager. He is a Hazara, which means he's a Shiite. He is also Taki, my chief engineer, is also a Hazara. And this is his lovely daughter. These are the downtrodden class of Afghanistan, the Hazara people who had the 2 highest positions in my plant. Our daughter Carolyn came and visited while I was there, as did my wife Roby. As you leave Kabul and go down to Jalalabad, where our second project is, International Foundation of Hope, you follow the Kabul River down into the Kabul River, through the gorge into the Kabul River Basin. This is the main national highway from Kabul to the eastern border, going to Peshawar. Part of what we were doing with our tree and food project was to help. This guy is washing raisins to upgrade food production sanitation. That's Tora Bora. This is our nursery. One of the projects we had was to grow woodlot trees, black pines specifically. We collect pine cones, take all the seeds out of them, nest them in this seeding bed, which has about 250,000 seedlings in it. You can see now individually they're starting to come up. And then these trees were taken to the next level when they were given away to Afghan farmers to grow for firewood and also construction lumber. We also had a project for fruit and nut trees. This is a Afghan rootstock that has had a piece of Pakistani bud for an orange tree grafted to it. So you get a very hardy root with an improved variety of fruit production that's pest resistant and higher yield. And again, we take them to a certain point and give them to farmers. These are some of our local staff at the nursery in Jalalabad. You can see the look of 20 years of opium in his face. This gentleman has kind of some surprising eyes. He's one of our nursery foremen. This is one of our security details that would generally go out in groups of 4. We have a militia of 55 armed uniformed guards now. Around 50 extension agents who go out to the farmer and show them how to plant, irrigate, prune, fertilize their trees, take care of them, take them to commercial production. Another project we had was dredging out these irrigation and drainage ditches which dot the area. And this is something interesting. This is called Hikmatyar's Dam. Gulbuddin Hikmatyar is probably the number 3 most wanted person in Afghanistan today. He was a Mujahideen freedom fighter in the jihad against the Soviets who was financed primarily by General Zia al-Haq because he was a radical fundamentalist jihadist even back in the 70s. When the Civil War ensued after we left in '89, Hikmatyar denounced all things foreign and started destroying food processing plants and irrigation systems and factories for cotton carding and all of the other infrastructure that the Soviets had built there, denouncing it as foreign and we don't need this. He pulled out all of the hydroelectric turbines from this dam and hauled it off to Pakistan and sold it for scrap. And this is kind of typical of the kind of deprivation that the people have suffered. And this is the end of Afghan cuisine. This is a little bit of modern technology, which I'm not sure where it came from, but it's a pressure cooker. And what it is the fastest, cheapest, lowest fuel way of cooking food. Afghan cuisine is intricate, and it's designed to keep the ladies in the kitchen for days producing these various complex meals. And now you just throw it all in a pot, cook it for 5 minutes till it turns gray and eat it. So why are all the ladies laughing? Yeah, okay. Technology is kind of where I'd like to close here. In Afghanistan, they are not early adopters or early adapters, except when it comes to weapons and certain kinds of tools. But it is important when introducing technology, be it hardware or ideas, to consider the implications of introducing that level of technology to people who have a limited absorptive capacity by virtue of education or training, or whose habits will not change as may be required by the technology to successfully use it. And this is a little bit of a joke, but in other ways, it isn't funny. You give a guy a truck to haul his animals around, and the animals are not tethered, so they tend to fall out. You give a guy a 40-foot container with an 18-foot truck bed to haul it on, and the container will fall off. You give a guy a heavy crane and don't tell him how much it can lift, it will break. So education and training, you have a flat tire, generally the middle of the road isn't a good place to change it. And you can see accidents waiting to happen. They're drilling a well. They have a big engine here with a flywheel. The starter's broken. So this fellow's going to get on it and push it forward, but he's missing 3 fingers on his right hand because he's gotten it stuck in there before. These guys are sleeping on this rebar on the back of this truck, getting ready to roll down the highway, and you can kind of predict what's going to happen. They are simple, uneducated, primitive people. Happy. people, seeing my daughter riding in the front of the car, bursting forth in song and dance, and the result isn't so happy because these drivers are accustomed to maybe riding a bike or to driving a cart, and you give them a truck that's loaded to 3 times capacity and let them go 60, 80 miles an hour on the highway. And there are a lot of problems compounded by the fact that Afghanistan is the dumping ground of China and Pakistan for counterfeit, substandard, and dangerous products, from drugs to brake parts to computer equipment. That is not an HP printer. Whoever made that in China put more money into the package to make it look like an HP printer than they put into the printer itself. So if you go to a hospital and get antibiotics, they're not real. If you buy brakes for your Toyota, they're going to give out because they're not real. If you buy bottled water, and I need to move this cursor, you'll notice that this is real Nestle Pure Life, and you see the similarity between the labels. For a illiterate, especially in English language consumer, it's difficult for them to be able to tell when you have the cute little pink people and everything and the round label and it's blue. But if you look in the bottom of this, it's full of algae. And if you look in the bottom of this one, it has very high TDS, total dissolved solids, which are different kinds of salts. This one will just make you sick. This one will make you really sick. And because it's in a bottle, people think it's safe. And they don't have the education to be able to discriminate between them. On the more dangerous side, uninterrupted double P power supply. Everywhere that I traveled and with everybody that I worked, I always encountered a friendly face, a hospitable gesture, a welcoming almost embrace by people who looked to me to help them to put aside their past and to move on to the future. A lot of what this entailed at the work in my company was recasting my business goals in ways which they could understand and accept within their culture, the way they made decisions, the way they accepted authority. It took me a few months, even going back this last time, to get to the point where I could look at the way they did things and not get irritated and impatient about it, but be able to work with their particular worldview when it came to progress and performance and even time and space, to be able to get my business goals accomplished in ways that they could accept and buy into as their own. I think this experience is replicable and also scalable on a much larger level nationally. And a lot of it has to do with a perception of legitimacy and leadership. This was my company. I clearly was the legitimate director, and I had the authority to do what I was charged to do in the company. They have a problem with their government now that they view Hamid Karzai basically as being the puppet of the United States, and therefore he is an illegitimate leader of the nation. One of the things that I hope will be accomplished by Karzai if he's reelected, or by his replacement if it's somebody else, will be to assert his legitimacy as a leader of the Afghan people by presenting and positioning himself and acting like the servant of the Afghan people in their own best interests, rather than to the benefit of his own narrow constituencies, who will be the people who elect him. So my hope for Afghanistan is that the United States and the international community in supporting legitimacy in government and in the reinforcement of the real underpinnings to a civil society in Afghanistan, law and order, prosecuting war criminals, and going after the drug lords, will have a remarkable success, because the people clearly, in a huge majority, want the same thing that we want. They want education and training and good health and nutrition for themselves and their families. They want to see Afghanistan take a role in a world economy and not just continue to be a nation of people who sit in tea shops weaving carpets. They look at us as people who create and understand cures for cancer. We go to the moon, we build submarines, we have fabulous systems. The people want to participate. And it's not that difficult to take $20 million a day farmers, and by doubling their income, going from $1 a day to $2 a day, think of it, the difference between $1 a day and $2 a day. Think about your situation if all of a sudden your income were doubled. What would you do with it? And all of the microfinance, Green Bank, other programs that focus on these kinds of things in developing countries show that that extra dollar a day is invested in education for children, nutrition, and health care. And those are the things which drive societies to create employment and to be more educated, to elect better informed officials, which I think is really one of the underpinnings to a successful nation. Thank you very much.
Question. I'm here. I understand that, as you say, that production of poppies is a very important crop in Afghanistan. What we are trying to do, and the government's trying to do, is wipe that out. What is the impact to the people of trying to eliminate a great source of their income?
Thanks, that's a great question. Again, it's a nation of farmers, and farmers grow crops to earn money to feed and support their families. If you remove that crop and therefore that income, you are removing economic opportunity and even survival from that farmer class. Afghan farmers don't have any innate desire to participate in a conspiracy to poison American youth with drugs. All they are interested in is to grow crops, sell them, feed their families. Poppy is interesting in that it's a dryland crop that can be grown successfully with next to no care or other inputs other than seed. So you throw poppy seed on the ground, it grows. Generally, the pattern is a guy comes to the village, he gives you the seed, he pays for half of your crop in cash in advance. He comes back a few months later after you've harvested the crop and put it in burlap bags. He pays you the rest of the money and leaves with the raw opium. You end up with cash. The opportunity alternative for a dryland farmer is wheat or maybe some potatoes or onions, but you are forced into a barter society where you're not paid in cash. And generally, dryland areas are more remote. If you are a $1 a day farmer growing no matter what you grow, you don't have the money for a well, or if you had a well, for a pump to pump the water out of it, or for the fuel to run the pump. So barter economy farmers are very susceptible to the approach of poppy cartels. Generally, there are around the country a number of other, especially horticultural crops that compete very well against poppy for the farmer. So if the farmer is growing almonds, pomegranates, sour oranges, and a number also of agricultural crops, vegetables specifically, he can make as much or more growing those crops in a given access to markets than he can for poppy. but there is a very limited transportation infrastructure for him to get those crops to market to get cash. So the implications of eradication are you're removing the farmer's income and basically pushing him to make him susceptible to radical elements who politicize that situation, probably rightly. So I think the key here is continuing to invest in integrated rural agro development where farmers are assisted with credit to grow horticultural and other agricultural crops, where there is a transportation infrastructure and there is an availability of food processing plants that will receive, wash, cull, pack, and quality control agricultural produce in a more traditional market structure. This has been done very successfully in Turkey, Pakistan, India, Thailand, other economies that were really drug-driven, where the government, with foreign assistance, made substantial infrastructural investments, introduced crop alternatives, and then eradicated drugs after the farmers had legitimate and economically viable alternatives. Yes, ma'am.
How much success do you think your friend will have running against Karzai?
That's hard to say. Last I looked, there were 34 candidates in the field. Karzai is the incumbent. He has nominally kind of the catbird seat. My business partner, Baryalai, is from a notable family who has a remarkable history in the jihad against the Soviets. He's known nationwide. He, I guess in terms of votes, fortunately, but philosophically, unfortunately, has the support of two of the largest war criminal warlords in the country, Abdul Rashid Dostum, who was recently exiled to Turkey, and Mohammed Mokakek, who was a northern warlord in Mazar-e Sharif. If he were successful in getting the support of one more ethnic group like the Hazara, he may pull it off. Interestingly, though, the vote in Afghanistan in the election will be decided by women. And it will be decided by women because their identification cards have no photo, and those cards will be collected by their husbands and given to the decision maker in their village or district or province, and those votes will all be placed in a block in some kind of negotiated alignment with one of the candidates.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to your water, your bottled water. Can you speak to the source of that water, where it came from, and what your relationship was or is with the people who were using that water to begin with?
Sure. We are the only spring water bottler in the country. Everybody else is pumping from a well and using reverse osmosis, which is what Coke and Pepsi, if you drink Aquafina or Dasani, that's what that is. It is recycled municipal tap water. We had spring. We contracted for a license to the spring, which was being used for agricultural output, and about 75% of it was being wasted just going over the hill. We took that 75%, so the original use was maintained.
Over here?
Yes.
Hi. Recently on NPR, I think it was either Bill Moyers or Charlie Rose, there was a woman, I think her name was Sarah Chase.
Yes.
You know her?
I do.
She was an NPR reporter who went there and was kind of given her life's last 10, 15 years or something. Paints a very positive view of Afghanistan. And I got the feeling from her that if the United States could invest some resources in infrastructure and in, other than military things, the military is necessary, but if we really can help these people, unlike Iraq where we have wasted untold billions of dollars, the Afghan people seem to be ripe or willing to listen to us and are interested in our help. I wonder what your thought is in that regard.
I absolutely agree, and I hope I conveyed that message tonight, that the people are hopeful, they are helpful, and they want to participate. It's been a 35-year human tragedy. They are ready to move on. They are dominated by a small clique of illegal power brokers who have really usurped the traditional decision-making structures of the country, generally armed young guys who are in the drug business. The hope is, first of all, I think, in recognizing maybe initially the difference in our definition of security and Afghans' definition of security. For us, it's a military function of military doctrine. For them, it is a function of having a underlying rule of law. But I think ultimately it's important that you represent rural development and integrated agricultural development schemes and those kinds of things as being an opportunity that is far greater than anything that the insurgents can offer. Because really, there is no benefit statement to anything that the insurgents offer. We are losing the battle for hearts and minds in Afghanistan because of PR, because of marketing, because of the way we are promoted and positioned. How many stories about our atrocities do you hear on our own, in our own media? And how many stories do you think you hear about our building schools on Al Jazeera? There are 3 PSYOPs, psychological operations units in the U.S. Army. Only one of them is activated, and it is staffed by young kids who are good at designing bumper stickers and t-shirts but don't know anything about how to mount a counter-propaganda campaign, which has a lot to do with this, about how we're represented, how we're positioned, how we're sold on the street.
Thank you. Our last question is up here.
Yes, sir.
In other parts of the Middle East, the Shiites and the Sunnis do not get along, and most every country is the same way. They don't get along. What is the situation in Afghanistan?
I would go back to, let me go back to the 70s for a minute. My wife Roby and I met in Iran in 1973, and Roby arrived in Afghanistan in 1972, alone, unaccompanied, blonde, blue-eyed, white, unmarried, American Christian woman, and was treated with great hospitality and respect, was shown tremendous deference and courtesy, was welcomed into people's homes as an honored guest, had a wonderful time, and was escorted out of the country with fabulous memories and photos. If she were to go back today, exhibiting any of those characteristics, she could have serious trouble. What changed? What happened? What is it that changed this nation of moderate Muslims whose faith was heavily influenced by Sufism, who worshipped pre-Islamic saints, who had a very liberal notion about Christians and Jews and their acceptance of us as people of the book, that we share a common Old Testament and all worship the same God of Abraham. What happened didn't have anything to do with American Hollywood or culture or Bollywood or those kinds of foreign influences that people decry. What happened was the influence of radical Saudi Wahhabi Islam and the reinforcement of what is really a very austere 8th century tribal desert culture. The Shiites were always the downtrodden minority of Afghanistan. They are ethnically recognizable. Shiites are regarded as heretics by all of the more traditional sects of Sunni Islam. But what has happened recently is that, or in the last wars is that Iran, of course, is a Shiite nation and welcomed those Hazara refugees into Iran and educated and trained and employed those people. And now many of them, like my chief technician, my chief engineer, and my sales guy, have all come back to Afghanistan with higher levels of education and skills than any of their Pashtun-dominant Sunni counterparts were able to achieve in the same period. So they are achieving a hegemony economically, which is quite interesting. Sunni and Shia will always be at odds on everything from doctrine to ritual to fundamental core beliefs. But nonetheless, my partner, Barialai, is one of the few people who have really been pushing national reconciliation. His brother was Abdul Haq, who may mean something to some of you. He was a very famous Mujahideen commander who went into Afghanistan at the end of 2001 to prepare the way for the king to come back and start a new Loya-Jirga to select a new government. He was captured by the Taliban and assassinated. He is a martyr of the jihad, and Barialai has taken up his cause of national reconciliation between all these tribal groups. That is the key to success in the country, of having people start to think about Afghanistan in terms of a national concept rather than being constantly divided along ethnic or religious lines. But the Shia-Sunni schism is something, or schism? Yeah, schism is something that is well, I mean, look at Northern Ireland. You still have Protestants and Catholics going after it, and ultimately it all seems to boil down to money once you get past doctrine. So, thank you all again very much.